All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're jumping right into the J&K budget session. And this is not your typical budget meeting. This is a major showdown that could determine the future of the region.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting,
Hmm?
especially because it's the first session in over 7 years. Things have changed so much since 2018. We're talking about the removal of Article 370, a completely new political landscape. There's a real tension in the air. This session is a battleground for different visions of how J&K should be governed.
Okay, so for those of us who haven't been following every single detail, can you give us a quick rundown? What's going on in this session? What's the context?
Well, the J&K Legislative Assembly is finally back in session after this long break, but it's not back to normal. The very identity of Jammu and Kashmir is being debated. The National Conference is now the majority in the Assembly, and they're known for advocating for regional autonomy.
Interesting. So how does that change things? Especially with the BJP also being a major force in the region.
It creates a really delicate balance of power. The BJP isn't in control of the assembly, but they still have a lot of influence nationally. So it creates this interesting tension. You have the National Conference pushing for more regional control. And on the other side, you have the BJP advocating for greater integration with India.
So we've got this tug of war between the National Conference and the BJP. And right in the middle of it is this budget session. Who are the major players we should be watching, and what are they bringing to the table?
Well, all eyes are on Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha and Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. Sinha kicks things off with his address. He lays out the government's agenda. But the real spotlight is on Abdullah. As finance minister, he's the one presenting the budget. It's a huge moment for him. He's showcasing his vision for the region's economic future.
It would be really interesting to compare this to the last budget presentation back in 2018. That was by the PDP's Hasib Drabu, right? It feels like a completely different world back then.
Absolutely. Back then, Article 370 was still in place. J&K had special autonomous status. That's all changed now. The stakes are incredibly high for Omar Abdullah. He's not just presenting numbers. He's presenting a roadmap for J&K in this new era.
You mentioned that the removal of Article 370 has really shaken things up. Is that playing a role in this budget session?
Oh, absolutely. It's the elephant in the room. One of the most explosive elements of this session is a set of private members' bills that have been introduced.
Okay, so private members' bills. What exactly does that mean for those of us who aren't political experts?
It means that these bills are proposed by individual members of the Assembly, rather than being introduced by the government. And let me tell you, these bills are adding fuel to the fire.
Okay, you've got my attention. Tell me more about these bills.
Well, one of them directly challenges the removal of Article 370. MLA Sajjad Lone has put forward a bill demanding its restoration, along with Article 35A, which gave special rights to the people of J&K.
Wow, that's a bold move, especially with how strongly the BJP feels about the issue.
It really is. And it highlights the deep divisions that still exist about J&K's relationship with the rest of India. Realistically, this bill has almost no chance of passing. But it's a powerful symbolic gesture.
So we've got one bill challenging the status quo. What about the other two? What hot-button issues are they taking on?
Another bill proposed by 3 MLAs, including one from the ruling National Conference, aims to completely ban liquor in J&K. Now, this might seem like a simple moral issue, but it's actually incredibly complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have huge social and economic consequences. What are some of the potential downsides of such a ban?
Well, history shows us that prohibition rarely works as intended. We've seen it in other parts of India and around the world. It often creates a thriving black market, increased crime, and a loss of government revenue. Not to mention it takes away personal freedoms.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've got one bill challenging the removal of Article 370, another pushing for prohibition. What's the third bill about?
This one's a real powder keg. NC MLA Dr. Bashir Ahmed Viri has proposed a complete overhaul of the reservation system in J&K. He wants to increase the open merit category to 60%, which means a huge reduction in seats reserved for certain categories.
That's a massive change. The reservation system is already a sensitive topic in India. This could really spark some serious tension, couldn't it?
Absolutely. This is going to be one of the most closely watched and debated parts of the session. It gets to the core of social and economic equity in the region.
So we've got these 3 incredibly controversial bills, a tense political backdrop, and the weight of history on everyone's shoulders. This budget session is shaping up to be a real political thriller. It feels like we're watching this high-stakes chess match play out. With all these different interests at play, what are possible outcomes of this budget session? Could this be a moment for positive change, or is it more likely to just make the existing divisions worse?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? This session could be a turning point for J&K. But it could also just make things more tense. It all depends on how everyone navigates this incredibly complicated situation.
Let's talk about the national conference for a second. They have the majority, but they're also facing pressure from both within J&K and from the national government. What do you think their strategy will be?
Well, the National Conference is walking a tightrope. They want to keep their base happy, who are really worried about the loss of autonomy after Article 370 was removed. But they also have to be realistic and work within the current political system.
So they can't just ignore the elephant in the room.
Exactly. They need to address the concerns about Article 370, but they also need to show that they can govern effectively and deliver on things like economic development, creating jobs, and improving basic services.
So it's about balancing those emotional and political concerns about autonomy while also focusing on practical everyday problems that affect people's lives. How do you see them doing that?
It seems like they have a two-part strategy. First, they'll probably use this session to voice their opposition to the removal of Article 370. It's a way to signal to their supporters that they haven't given up on the issue, even if they can't change it on their own.
So it's about showing they're still credible and that they're still fighting for the people of J&K.
Exactly. Second, they need to deliver a budget that addresses the real economic and social needs of the region. That means focusing on infrastructure, investing in education and healthcare, and creating job opportunities.
So it's about showing they can govern effectively, even with the limitations of the current political situation. What about the BJP? They're not in control of the assembly, but they still have a lot of influence. What do you think their plan is?
Well, the BJP is in a more reactive position now. Their main goal is to downplay the controversy over Article 370 and to highlight the benefits of J&K being integrated with the rest of India.
So they're shifting the focus away from autonomy and towards economic progress and development.
Exactly. They'll probably emphasize how much the national government has invested in infrastructure, tourism, and job creation. They'll want to paint a picture of a region that's thriving under the new status quo.
It sounds like they'll be trying to control the narrative around the session.
Yeah.
But beyond the NC and the BJP, we also have other players, like the Congress and independent MLAs. What roles do you see them playing?
The Congress doesn't have as much power in the Assembly now, so they'll probably try to be the voice of reason and compromise. They might try to bridge the gap between the NC and the BJP and push for dialogue and compromise.
They're playing the peacemaker, trying to find common ground.
Yeah, they might try to emphasize the need for unity, that everyone needs to work together, and that the focus should be on the well-being of the people of J&K, not on scoring political points.
What about the independent MLAs? They often have a lot of influence in these situations, don't they? Their votes can be really important on these controversial bills.
Oh, absolutely. Both the NC and the BJP will be trying to get their support. Their votes could decide things. It's a delicate dance of alliances and negotiations, and the independent MLAs are the ones who often hold the balance of power.
It seems like this budget session isn't just about numbers and policies. It's about these complicated political dynamics, regional aspirations, and the very identity of J&K.
Yeah, it's a fascinating example of the larger political landscape in India. We're seeing the challenges of democracy play out in real time, the struggle for power, the need for compromise, and trying to find solutions for a complex society with diverse needs.
It reminds us that politics isn't just about abstract ideas. It's about people's lives, their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the future.
And in this case, it's about shaping the future of a region that's been at the crossroads of history for centuries. The decisions made in this budget session will have a huge impact on millions of people.
Now, with all this political drama going on, let's not forget about the budget itself. What are some of the big economic challenges J&K is facing? And what should we be looking for in this budget to address those challenges?
Well, J&K's economy is unique, and it faces a lot of different challenges. It relies heavily on tourism and agriculture, both of which are vulnerable to things outside their control. Whether it's political instability or climate change, there's also the problem of limited industrial development and a lack of diversity in the economy.
So what are some of the key things this budget needs to address?
Infrastructure development is absolutely essential. Improving connections within the region, as well as with the rest of India, is crucial for attracting investment and boosting economic growth. This means investing in roads, railways, airports, and digital infrastructure.
So it's about removing the obstacles that are holding back economic growth.
Right.
And creating opportunities for businesses to succeed.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical infrastructure, it's also about creating a good environment for businesses. That means simplifying regulations, reducing bureaucracy, and providing incentives for entrepreneurship and innovation.
So it's about creating a climate where businesses can grow and create jobs, which is especially important with the high unemployment in J&K, particularly among young people.
Absolutely. And it's not just about creating any jobs. It's about creating good jobs, jobs that pay a living wage, offer job security, and give people opportunities to advance their careers. This means investing in skills development and training programs that align with the needs of the modern economy.
So it's not just about any job. It's about creating jobs that give people a chance for a better life. What about the agricultural sector? It's a huge part of J&K's economy, but it's also facing some serious problems.
Yeah, agriculture is the foundation of J&K's economy, but it's facing a lot of obstacles, from climate change to outdated farming methods and a lack of access to markets. This budget needs to prioritize investments that help farmers modernize, become more resilient to climate change, and find profitable markets for their products.
So things like irrigation systems, cold storage facilities, and support for organic farming.
Exactly. It's about giving farmers the tools and resources they need to thrive and connecting them with markets where they can get a fair price for their work.
This budget session is about so much more than just numbers on a page. It's about the hopes and dreams of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And it's about finding a way forward for a region that's at a crucial point in its history.
It's a really pivotal moment, and we'll be watching closely to see what happens.
We spent a lot of time talking about the economic aspects, but what about the social side of things in J&K? How does this budget address the needs of the people, especially when it comes to essential services like education and healthcare?
Yeah, that's really important. You can't overlook those things. The well-being of a society is tied to how good its education and healthcare systems are. This budget needs to show a commitment to investing in those areas, not just with money, but also with innovative approaches and making sure everyone has access.
You mentioned access. What are some of the challenges J&K faces in making sure everyone has access to good education and healthcare, no matter their background or where they live?
Well, J&K is a diverse region geographically. You have remote mountain areas, scattered villages, and densely populated cities. Making sure quality healthcare and education reach everyone requires a multifaceted approach.
So it's not just about building more schools and hospitals. It's about making sure people can actually get to them, especially those who need them the most.
Exactly. It's about investing in infrastructure that connects those remote communities, training and keeping qualified teachers and healthcare workers, and making sure the curriculum and services are culturally sensitive and relevant to the needs of different communities.
It sounds like a complicated challenge. Are there any specific things in this budget that try to address these issues?
There are some positive signs. There's been talk of increasing funding for mobile medical units that can reach those remote villages, and a proposal for telemedicine centers so patients can connect with specialists in cities.
That's good to hear. It sounds like they're trying to use technology to bridge those gaps. What about education? Are there any new approaches being considered?
There's a lot of talk about digital literacy and bringing technology into the classroom. And there's a focus on vocational training programs to give young people the skills they need for jobs in new industries.
It's interesting how this budget session reflects those bigger trends, like technology's role in bridging gaps and changing traditional sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it highlights that development isn't just about economic growth. It's about giving people the knowledge, skills, and opportunities to live fulfilling lives.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this J&K budget session, what are your final thoughts? What should our listeners be watching for as this session continues?
Well, the biggest thing is this session is about a lot more than just numbers and spending. It's about the future of Jammu and Kashmir, and about finding solutions to the complicated political, economic, and social challenges that the region is facing.
It's about finding that balance between the desire for regional autonomy and the need for integration and development.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough balancing act. And the decisions made here will have lasting consequences. I think listeners should pay attention to what's being said, but also to what's not being said.
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes what's left unsaid is just as important. Notice which issues they focus on, whose voices are being heard, and which concerns are being ignored.
That's a great point. It's about reading between the lines and understanding the power dynamics at play.
And in the end, it's about being informed citizens and participating in this process. The future of J&K isn't decided in isolation. It's a shared responsibility, and everyone's voice matters.
So as we finish our deep dive, we encourage our listeners to stay informed, ask tough questions, and participate in the conversation about the future of this incredible and complex region. The story of Jammu and Kashmir is still being written. And we all have a part to play in shaping the next chapter.
Well said. It's definitely a story worth following.